Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/smartcookie.
A choice right now. Between fear and love. It's just a ride.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this episode, Ruth Mendelson. She is the first woman in the history of Berklee College of Music to teach in the film scoring department. She's an Emmy-nominated composer, producer, arranger. She has done scores for tons of networks. I mean, the list: HBO, National Geographic, Discovery, Disney, Animal Planet, all of these things, the Learning Channel. She has got an incredible resume. What I find even more fascinating about this incredible young lady is her outlook on all of this, her divine timing aspect of everything. She is incredibly in sync with the synchronicities that surround her in the most incredible way. She is one of the most amazing talk-tos that I've ever had, guys. This conversation is wonderful. So without any further ado, let's get to it here. This is Ruth Mendelson. All right, ladies and gentlemen, everyone out in listening world, an incredibly special episode today. We have Ruth Mendelson here with us. Thank you so much for your time. How are you today, Ruth?
I am really grateful to be here. Thank you so much. That's how I am right now.
Same over here. I'm telling you, all the gratitude is being poured in both directions here. So let's run down just a few of the things that we know about you here. So you're a New York Times Critics' Pick and an Emmy nominee. You're a composer, producer, arranger. You've been writing award-winning scores for documentaries, HBO, National Geographic, Discovery Channel. You've done it all. So that's just to touch the surface there. And then, of course, your work at Berklee College. Tell us about the work at Berklee specifically.
Okay, well, first of all, honestly, all of those credits are just nothing but nameplates from the universe, really, so that I can do what I'm really here for, which is to be of service.
I love this. You're in.
Right. So, the credits are, those things sound really impressive. They're very ephemeral, the way that all awards are. But in a world that needs love and compassion, they're helpful to have because it gives credibility to caring. It gives credibility to encouraging people to have integrity and follow their hearts. And so, for that reason, I put the awards in there in terms of my bio and stuff. Otherwise, to be honest with you, I could really care less.
Which makes you even cooler. I got to be honest. This makes you even cooler. And especially, and this is, of course, probably why you're so entrenched with Jane Goodall, which we will get to. But
yeah, she's a dear, dear friend. And
incredible. So so Grace McCormick is how we know each other. So Grace and I have known each other for a long time. I'm sure she told you. And then I had her on the show.
And you made a guitar you made your own guitar.
Well, I carved it. So it's this one back over here. And basically I just took a screwdriver and I just carved it. So yeah.
That's insane. That I would love to see it at some point. But to answer your first question in terms of Berklee, Berklee was kind of like the book I wrote that I also just, I'm sure that we'll get to. It pursued me. I had no interest in teaching at all. I did study there. I actually, to be totally honest, to be complete, I was in Colorado years ago. I had a dream where I was told that I needed to move to Boston to learn how to read music and that it was time to study.
Wow.
And I picked up everything. My friends at the time everyone thought I was crazy. I was 19 and moved to Boston and was really grateful that I didn't know what would be in store for me for the first 2 years because they were really hard. But I waitressed, I drove a truck, I did all kinds of crazy things, and then eventually got into school. And so by the time I was in school, I was so relieved to not be driving a truck. Like, just to be sitting in a classroom receiving information all day was like, oh my God, I love this. And just learning, just learning. I was a self-taught musician since very, very, very young. And I had felt very intimidated to actually study formally. For a couple of reasons. People kept telling me, I started as a guitarist, I play a zillion instruments now. But as a guitarist, people used to say to me, wow, you're not supposed to be able to do that. And so my impression of studying was that it confines your creativity. So for that reason, I avoided it. But eventually, you know how it is, everything, when it goes to its extreme, it becomes its opposite. And so my rebellion against, being restricted turned into ultimately a fear of, well, what if I actually find out I'm not any good if I study?
I got to say this here. Whenever you said that, it gave me goosebumps because it mirrors my story. I started with guitar, self-taught. I used to play. So my role in my band, because I had a band, I did a bunch of stuff. But anyway, in my band, my role was you have to be better than me to play with me, right? And I had no problem with that. I had 3 people actually in my band that got accepted to Berklee School of Music, a bass player, violinist, and a cello player. The drummers that I played with, one of the drummers' grandfathers or great-grandfather, I forget which one, invented the kick drum pedal. All of these people were incredible musicians. Yeah, like the concept of a kick drum for that. So all of these people were incredible, but same thing, self-taught. Now, I had a keyboardist that was classically trained, theory major, tell me, same as you, this is what gave me goosebumps when you said it, you can't do that. And I said, well, sure I can. Watch. Bink, bink. And he was like, no, you can't go from that chord to that chord. Yeah. And like you, now you took it one step further, and we'll definitely get into that because I think that's fascinating. But I never learned how to read music. I actually actively, for the same reasons, thought I didn't want to learn music for the same reasons. An ego issue of not finding out that I'm not that good, or it's skewing my creativity at all. So I've never heard anyone put it this way before other than myself, and I've never really said it out loud. That's fascinating. That's cool.
I've never met anybody to mirror that back either. That's amazing. So thank you.
Soul Tribe. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Woo.
Ow.
So what happened was, so then it got to the point where I was intimidated to actually study, because what if I found out I really wasn't any good after all? And so then what happened was I was asked to somebody heard me play something somewhere, and they asked me to do some studio work with them. I got into the studio very naively. They put a piece of paper in front of me, and it was, I was like, that's hieroglyphics. What do I do with this? And it was so stunningly humiliating that it's like, okay, it was just, it totally shifted. It shocked things into enough non-equilibrium where it's like, okay, I need to find a new center.
Yeah. And it does.
It does. Right. And then I met somebody. By then I was like in my early, late teens. When I first, then I met someone who was at the time in her 50s, which when you're in your 20s, that's like,
dinosaur.
A dinosaur pre-wheel. Exactly.
Right,
and so, but she was an actress in New York. Not that I ever aspired to actor. That hasn't been really so much my passion, but she had a vibe about her that I realized at the time, this is what it looks like when you actually do what you're meant to do. And it was a really important reflection. So that night after meeting this person, I remember sitting down at my kitchen at the time which I used to do a lot, just late at night, sitting at the kitchen, listening to the whir of the refrigerator and just write, just reflect and write. And writing about what am I doing? Where am I going? I need to study. I'm terrified. Okay, let's go. And then it was, around that time, I had this dream that I had to move to Boston, which to me was just like this foreign planet. But I just picked up at the time, there wasn't much going on in terms of any kinds of attachments in my life at all. And so I just went and went.
There's this concept of things being skewed. And so like this natural concept of things whenever, and I'll say this just observationally, whenever humans get their hands in it, there tends to be this natural entropy that occurs, right? So even with music, even like you say about your accolades and everything, that's just an accolade. That's just a tool for you to then be exposed to more people to share the word and the music that you've got, your talent. And with the the music reading element of it, it feels like that as well. It takes some of that purity away. This takes somebody who's learned a skill or something either independent on their own by feeling, by inspiration, by guided by whatever you want to say, divine timing, all of those things. And it takes this. Absolutely, I would too. And I want to talk to you about inspiration here in a second as well. But it kind of takes and skews this stuff. Now, the entropy part of it is even something as pure as going out, making a skin drum out of something, and then commercializing it, right? And then so turning it into an industry, into something where there's standards where you don't decide those standards, sort of like art. I mean, there's this natural degradation into anything that humans get their hands in, even something as pure and beautiful, and I'm going to say divine as music. That's like the ultimate communication with the universe, with us on a spiritual level, math and music, and they're not independent of each other.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Right.
It's a crazy way to look at it, though, because it seems like you said, I mean, everything that's pure gets corrupted at some point, even by a simple requiring to read a sheet of music to be able to participate in your gift. But you figured out how to walk between both worlds.
Well, I think what you just said, though, is the key. The awareness that if you get in the way, you're screwing it up.
I think there's a lot to that.
There's a lot because to be completely transparent about this in terms of my own creative process, the first thing I do, really honestly, is put out for lack of a better term, these days it can be a controversial term even, but I put out a prayer to just stay out of the way. Because the music, whether it's written words, but music, like you say, is absolutely one of the most pure of divine voices. So the music is so much bigger than me. I mean, every time I get done with a score, it's frightening. And what just happened? Or not just a score. I mean, if I'm tracking something for someone, playing, whatever instrument I'm playing, it's startling for me at the end because it's like, what just happened?
Yes.
So if the goal is to stay out of the way, if there's that awareness that there's a tendency to get in the way, that awareness then can be used to produce the opposite, which is to keep it pure, or at least as pure as possible.
I agree with that. And getting out of the way is something I've experienced as well. And I even do this with this show. I will not remember any of the episode until I go back to edit it later. I'm in this moment. You and I are here doing this. It doesn't matter if I remember every little bit of the detail. I go back and listen to it like it's the first time after I hear this. This also happens with musicians, with people who get in that zone, that, whenever you get into the most pure state of what you do, what is your true essence, there's no mental cognition in the moment. It's a release. And the more you surrender to that idea, the better the performance, the more true and authentic it comes out.
Because just to riff off of what you're saying, because for me, then it's not really a performance at all.
Right. Exactly. It's a state of existence. You're channeling higher consciousness. Exactly. There's no performing. There's no performing. That's just right. Responding and letting it through, whatever that translates into. And I completely agree. And it's in this way that you can kind of see this with like mediums or somebody like that that's channeling an entity. You're basically, and if you want to go really, really deep on this, which I love doing, then
I do.
you're bringing the highest state of consciousness possible down to a human third dimension reality vibration and sharing this, even though it's exceptional and something that not everybody can do or can experience or can, let's put channel in a way, because that's how it feels to me. I've at least got several songs that I can tell you I don't remember writing at all. They're actually my favorite ones, and it doesn't feel like it came from me at all. Stylistically, they're very different. It's chord progressions and fingerings that I haven't written into any other songs, but they're my favorite melodies. Like the way that it plays, I'm like, I didn't write this, you know? And even people like Tesla, there are these downloads that are talked about these great divine inspirations. Scientists go through this. Musicians are, I think, the closest step to this because they're very aware of this process. They don't deny it and try to write it off with something that they're trying to explain as a scientific observation. It's purer than that. You, like you said, that's getting in the way by just trying to explain it. It's getting in the way. Yeah,
interpretation can taint it.
So have you done that? Have you written music and been like, where the hell did this come from?
A lot, yes. Often. I mean, when it's really, really good, that usually is what happens. It's just like, whoa. Often.
What made you want to write scores specifically? Because scores for movies to me, as a musician, seem like one of the most challenging things in the world. Because you're a conductor, you're conducting an entire arrangement of music that goes in a certain flow, and you've got to be cognizant of the way that all of these things interact and play together.
Okay, that's a good question. That's a really good question. This is another one. I never aspired to do this. I mean, a lot of my life is a series of the wrong things happening in the right way. And so what happened was, I did get into a music school. I did get into Berklee years ago. I was a performance major way back then. I was playing with a great drummer named Ed Uribe. He passed recently, a couple of years ago. But anyway, so I was playing this session with him. I was playing 5-string bass. And we were doing live to 2-track, and just like, it was a Chick Corea tune actually at the time that we were playing. And at the end of the session, my right wrist just gave out. I mean, it was really scary. That had never happened before. I went to all these different doctors. Is it carpal tunnel? No. Tendonitis? No. And then I went to one doctor. It's interesting. The guy who was the most arrogant actually ended up giving me the best advice.
Oh, that is odd.
Yeah, it was odd. But, that was another lesson.
He was just that confident, right?
Yeah. But he did say something that was the most helpful. He said, you need to just don't think about this for 6 months. Give yourself 6 months. Do not play an instrument for 6 months. That was the ticket for me, because then it's like, okay, I'm not going to try, because what would happen was I would try to play piano, I'd try to play guitar, I'd try to play bass, I'd try to play, drums, whatever it was that I was trying to play. And the wrist would last for maybe literally 30 seconds, and then this pain would come back. And so by bracketing that time where, okay, I'm not going to do this, then that opened up the question that I think the universe was wanting me to ask myself all along, was how can I be involved in music if I can't play it? And so I started, it's like, well, I can always write. I mean, I can hear music internally. So, because at the time, it's like, I can't not be involved in music. That's like not breathing. So it's like, okay, I'm going to start studying composition, which I never aspired to do before. I never wanted to, I wasn't interested in it. I was more interested in being just a musician, but being a musician, but to actually study composition it never occurred to me to do that. And I had the real amazing good fortune of taking a class with somebody who was such an extraordinary, total inspiration. And that was like the universe completely opening up to a whole new realm of depth and color and expanse and movement, and that I never even knew existed. And it was really just discovering a completely new sphere dimension of music it was interesting because it felt like it was brand new, but it also felt like I've known this all along somehow, or it's familiar in a almost heartbreakingly beautiful way. It's familiar to me somehow, but it's brand new also. And so then I was thinking, well, how can I make a living doing this kind of thing? And I was like, well, there's a film scoring department. I think I'll take a class. And then it was like, wow, to study, to get inside the soul, the mind of a character, and to have to tune into those inner meridians so keenly, and then just express that through sound. How cool is that? So that's how it got started.
You know, what I like about this is, okay, do you think that your injury was an accident?
At the time I did. In retrospect, no.
Why?
Because sometimes things have to be taken away to redirect focus.
It's almost like, and this is exactly, I knew you'd answer it that way. That's why I asked. So if it's almost like whenever you look at this kind of thing, like you would have been fine and content, not even content, you would have thrived being just, in air quotes, as you said, a musician, right? But it seems like that you're calling clearly, and like you said, hindsight's 20/20. So at the time, yes, it's a setback. It's damn it, things didn't go towards plan. And if you're a big fan of manifestations and things like that, I have an idea about manifestation and setback. So I've got this idea, and I've been talking about this to a few folks lately. If you're into the concept of spirit guides and that time is only linear from our perspective because that's how we experience our experience and therefore it's infinite, right? But I will take it a little bit further to the idea that your now influences your past and your present. Obviously, your now is creating your future. The past that we have is just a memory of something that we used to experience, that the only way that we remember it is to bring it to now, to remember it, to recall it now. The future, though, is a sea of potentiality and possibilities. Now, what's really interesting, back to your point as well, is that let's say you wanted to just be a musician and the universe, so then therefore you manifest, I just want to be a musician, to your potential best self. Now your best self is already out there. It's living its life in your future that you are creating currently. This is just the idea. To this though, whenever you tell the universe, hey, I want this thing, but there's a better version of what you want, just slightly different, but the choices you make now are what impact that the most. I have this vision, instead of looking at it as setback, the way that I view it is I've sent something out to the universe. I just want to be a musician. Going back to your metaphor, I just want to be a musician. Well, then your spirit guides will send up to your future self and say, hey, she just wants to be a musician. Is this cool with you? And then your future self, that's your composer that's sitting next to Jane Goodall right now, says, hang on, no. Screw up her arm, and then have a doctor tell her with hubris that she needs to take 6 months off. That'll lead her into this, that'll lead her into that. So in my mind, it's almost like a delayed thing, but it actually steers you in the correct direction. So it's not setback, it's true divine timing. It's your future self telling those guys to come back and say, no, hold off. We've got something better in plan for you. And now look what you did with that. Yeah,
I would agree completely. I've never really quite thought of it in exactly like that, but yes. In fact, it's interesting. There was one time, when I was in my early 20s, so I had just moved to the Boston area. I mean, the first 2 years for me really, truly were miserable here. I don't live in the city. I live a little further out just because that helps my sanity. But first 2 years it was just hard for a number of reasons. And I was waitressing, and I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do. And it was in adjusting to the cultural shifts and all of that kind of stuff at the time. I had a dream at the height of that challenge one night, where I was in a car and I was in the back seat. Somebody else was driving, and I was who I was back then in the dream. The car suddenly stopped. Somebody opened my door, and a hand reached in to escort me out, which is strange. That's not how I live. But anyway, so somebody, like, this hand was, reaching to escort me out. This hand pulled me out, and the hand belonged to me 25 years later.
Yes.
And I looked into the eyes of this person as the person I was back then. And that person was so much more just almost incomprehensibly more together than I was at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just knew when I woke up that I was going to be okay.
Isn't that
I
fascinating?
didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew that the difficulties that I was experiencing at that point in time, this too shall pass. It'll be okay.
But even that recognition of it, that's some advanced black belt manifestation practices, and you just came about them naturally.
Yeah, I wasn't trying for anything. That's just what really happened. That just happened. You know, I can't really take credit for that. That just happened.
Right. And it is fascinating because it does seem to be like your intuition is maybe, one potential explanation for it would be that it is your future self guiding you from the future, That's
what it felt like to me.
God, I love stuff like this.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but hearing you talk, thank you for that, because it inspired me to remember that.
Thank you for that. It kind of validates the idea, because it's just, I have a little area back here that I walk and meditate in. I ground back here.
Cool.
We have a 12-acre ranch out here, so I've mowed a huge area of it, just a bunch of paths and stuff, and I let the wildlife grow up around it, and it's just kind of where I ground, and I come up with some really crazy ideas out there. That's my portal area where I can really tap in, ground with the earth, walk around barefoot, let the dogs run around, be very in the moment, and I get some crazy ideas like this. There's some really interesting inspirations. That was one of them that I had on one of these walks. So it's interesting. It's very cool. I love talking to people like you about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, mutual.
So let's talk about your book. So The Water Tree Way is awesome. I did get an advanced copy of it. It is more touted as like a children's book, but I think that there's a ton of wisdom in there for beyond that, because I know that one of the taglines is, it's great for children of all, but I think that there's so much wisdom in that thing. So what was the inspiration for that?
That's a really, well, first of all, thank you. That is another one of those. I never wanted to write a book. I never wanted to write a book. It wouldn't leave me alone. It started all the way back in 1985. That's where the initial these images started coming into my mind that are in the book, that are actually major characters in the book. And then, so I just started writing them, and then just felt oddly compelled to really just start to really, really write. But it was kind of like, there is a character in the book that's a mosquito that just won't leave the main character alone. That in a way was the book itself for me. It wouldn't leave me alone. So in between film scores, in between touring as a musician, in between whatever other things in life, a lot of humanitarian work that I do also, in between all of those things, there was this book. And it was finally, I thought, done. So over the course of decades, I was working on this thing. So I never in a zillion years, though, could have predicted that it would be as important as it is right now.
It's so great. Guys, check the show link, the show description for all of the little links to find her book or your work. I will link all the ways that you'd like me to down in the show notes as well. Go check this thing out. Very wholesome, tons of wisdom. So it's not just for kids, but it's very cross-generational. You guys can share this with your family. It's got a wonderful message, and it's a wonderful read. You're an incredible writer, music, and of the way that you do stuff is fascinating to me, because you've really got a great grip on leading people down a certain feeling with the narration going on top of it, or with the elements that are visually presented to you with your film score work. I think that it's one of the most fascinating ways to do music, because you're marrying things like the inspiration, feelings, and divine elements of music that connects us so much to source with the visual way in which people are used to and have been conditioned to. And it's just a lot easier for some folks to receive information. So you're marrying the two elements, and the way that the feelings of music then cross with the feelings of vision. It's fascinating to me what you're able to do.
Well, thank you. Honestly, this is absolutely a career that it's really cool that I can be this transparent. This is a career that I was guided into. This was not something where I set my sights and just worked towards this for years or anything like that. This was something at the end of the day, the most important thing is that the work is involving vibrational medicine.
Yeah.
And so artists, and this is for anyone out there who's listening who's an artist, please do your thing. Please get your work out there in whatever capacity is available to you. We don't know what actually is happening, I don't feel, in terms of when we're actually really releasing our artwork into the world, what it actually is really doing in terms of providing healing. It's extraordinarily powerful. And like many, many powerful things, it's also very subtle then too. Like it's not something that you can, you can't hook it up to a machine, at least at this point in history, and measure it in terms of its effectiveness to improve whatever, condition or situation a person, the listener or the viewer may be in. But it's a guarantee that it will bring healing. But it's not even our business to know to whom even. That's the other, it's like, it's not my business. It's only my business to stay out of its way, release it, and let it have feet of its own and do what it's supposed to do. It's not my business in terms of who it helps. The only thing I know in my heart is it's going to help somebody.
You're putting great things out into the universe, as opposed to somebody that does things for nefarious reasons with the intention of hurting somebody else. You're doing
Correct.
a beautiful gift of sharing something with someone with the intention of knowing that it will, but not for anyone in particular. It's for everyone. Because
Correct.
it's going to, to use a musical term, it's going to resonate with everyone differently, but impact somebody directly.
Absolutely. And that's why, it's the same thing, whether it's writing a book, which I do encourage listeners. This is not a shameless plug, you guys.
No.
Okay, at all. This is a world we all need and deserve reminders as to who we really are on the inside, especially right now, because that's what helps keeps you healthy, strong, balanced, confident. There are more than enough energies out there that are, I would just say, not in balance. I'm being diplomatic.
I am grateful for your diplomacy. 'Cause
Yeah.
I do the same thing. We walk a balance when we really want to just scream at everybody, right? But that's not the example that we set.
Because it's like, that doesn't really do it's not helpful.
It's not helpful. Good call. And I completely agree. Plus, it's counter to your message, right? It does the opposite
Exactly.
of its intended.
Exactly. But, anything, if it's designed, if it's from the heart and it's designed really to be helpful, it is a guaranteed medicine for others.
It's a guarantee. You can't miss. It's a bullseye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a thing, I think that, that's a message that I think is really important to get out there, to encourage everyone to just, express yourself. A lot of people like even for the book, the way that it just, like I said, when it wouldn't leave me alone, it was antagonizing my energy. Like it just, the book. Okay, all right, I'll write you. I will. I promise. Okay, I will. But I think that a lot of people, there are a lot of people walking around very vexed these days. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder also, I have to say, honestly, it's like, how many of those people who are vexed all the time have masterpieces in them that they're pushing away?
I'm going to say, in some capacity, all of them. They have something to contribute that's beautiful because that's why they're here. I believe it's a very purposeful reason why we're all here on some cosmic level. So, of course, they have something to get. Now, I would say also to that point, though, part of this experience or this dichotomy here, one of the ideas is that the lizard people that are running the world, right, it's planned. It's part of it. I heard, I've had a guy named Pat Mahan on my show, and he does a show called Like Attracts Like. He's wonderful. One of the examples he gave with dichotomy, and especially setbacks as far as what humanity does to humanity, is they're just two. There are two important parts of the same experience. He said his analogy on it was a play. Whenever the villain and the hero both bow at the end of the play because they're both a necessary part of the experience. So
That's
you
well
have
put.
to have that. Oh,
That's
Pat
well
Mahan's
put.
awesome. You would love Pat. He's incredible. Yeah.
That's cool.
I'll get you two hooked up. He's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
So, okay, what have you looked into sound healing at all and the work that's been done there?
Yeah, I haven't. it's something that I'm inherently just intuitively very interested in. It's something that I'm very dedicated to in a lot of the work that I'm doing, but I can't really say that I've studied it. There actually is a CD that I created a while ago. I wrote something for the New England Aquarium that they had a jellyfish exhibit. This is crazy. Okay. I'll just go. All right. So I was in the desert in Arizona where I spend a lot of time. That's actually, before COVID anyway, I haven't really gone there since COVID hit. I haven't traveled very much at all, but I usually, at least pre-COVID, I would do a lot of traveling, a lot of time alone in the desert. That's been my muse place. And there was one time I was out in Painted Desert Petrified Forest region.
I love that area. It is
so
gorgeous. That's one of my favorite national parks. My wife and I went there. It's because it's got the petroglyphs, it's got the hills, the petrified forest, everything.
Everything.
I'm with you.
It is magical there. It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so I was out there and just overlooking, 400 miles of land in all directions. It was beauty, personified. And then this message came that the sea beings were calling. And I started laughing. It's like, there's not a drop of water for miles here. The sea beings are calling. Okay. And so anyway, I scribbled it in my journal because when I go on these trips, when it's just me and, pure silence, I have a notebook if anything inspires me, And and I was also told that this music was going to hold many people in a space of love. So then I was back, zoom forward 4 months, I'm back in the East, and the New England Aquarium calls me up and says, well, we have this jellyfish exhibit coming up, and would you write the score? So I spent hours with these fish behind the scenes. Like all the fish were, like before the exhibit opened, it was really funny. All the fish were like in their tanks, like waiting to go on. It was kind of crazy. And I spent, like I said, hours just watching their movements and all the different kinds of jellyfish. And they're just stunningly beautiful. And the music that ended up coming through, I cried. It was just beautiful. And then the director was so moved by the music that he got a new speaker system for that exhibit.
Wow.
Now that was the setup because it seemed like, wow, this is really great. Then they placed the speakers in such awful positions. They totally they messed it. It wasn't good. It really, when I went, there's a reason I'm saying this. It's not to diss the aquarium people, it was more the lesson for me that was in store. I really, when I went to the premiere, I was like, how can this hold anybody in a space of love? You can't even hear it. How is this going to do anything? And the track itself, the music was 24 tracks of sound. It sounds very simple, but it's actually not. These tracks are all going very subtly in opposite directions, different directions at different rates to create the depth and movement of water. But it's music. It's not like trying to sound like literal water. So it was a very complex mix. But again, it was just what was there to do. And so then spiritually, I was like, well, kind of put me in a tailspin. Did I actually hear what I heard? Because the message seemed so clear when I got it. And this really looks like a mess right now. So So finally it got to the point, I just had to let it go. It's like, okay, for whatever reason, this was very disappointing, but okay, life goes on, life goes on. So a couple weeks after that point, I get this email from this woman who identifies herself as a teacher in Craig, Alaska, which is 5,000 miles from here, saying, I heard you wrote this jellyfish music that helps children learn. Can I get your CD? So I thought it was a prank, honestly. I thought it was one of my friends just, just pulling my leg. And so I
That
wrote
knew
back.
the story, yeah.
Right. So I wrote back and I said, I don't understand how you could have heard of this given it's a stationary exhibit and you're all the way on the opposite side of the continent. Do you have can I call you? Can we talk about this? And she wrote back with her phone number. It was Craig, Alaska. So what happened was a teacher went to the aquarium one day and there were very few people there. So she could actually hear the soundtrack and she was watching these fish and listening to the music and really getting the whole divine synchronicity of the whole thing. And she thought, wow, I need this in my classroom. This is going to help children learn. She wrote that on an international teachers forum. The teacher in Craig, Alaska read that, contacted the aquarium, who gave her my email address. And that's what started the whole thing. So then I did a new mix, because the mix that I ended up doing for the aquarium was specific for those speakers, even although it didn't really matter at the time, but it wasn't the same depth and color for home systems. So I went back into the studio and did a remix and released it. It basically went viral at the time. And I have a stack like this of snail mail and emails of people, using it in pain clinics, hospice, chemotherapy, surgery. One person said that her son was in a coma, and at the time he came out of the coma, he said it was his favorite music while in coma.
Interesting. So he remembers hearing the music while he was in the coma and that having a positive effect on him?
Yeah.
God.
So I haven't studied, like music therapy, but it's all about healing anyway. So,
when you're telling your story, and again, hindsight, what I love is the possibility that maybe, like, let's say a jellyfish contacted you and then wrote the song through you because it knew that this teacher was going to come over, hear it, even on a not ideal sound system, take that to a classroom. Maybe the child in that classroom, inspired by that music, ends up being the leader of the resistance that takes over the artificial intelligence in the future to the soundtrack of your music. We have no idea, like what you said about the gift. You have no idea the ripple effect.
We don't know. We don't know. I mean, exactly. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to get feedback about various projects. So that, and maybe that also is a part of the universe, it's like, so that I can model for people, this is what happens whether we find out about it or not. It doesn't matter. I just happen to be in a place where I hear about it sometimes.
And you're in tune enough to pay attention to those things. That's a big part of this. You at least can know what's happening. You said, okay, fine, wrote it down, fine, 4 minutes later, and then now you create these things. But it takes a lot of hubris on your point as well to be able to just, like you said, get out of the way. I think that recognition right there has set that foundation for you just to take on any kind of opportunity that you have and then thrive in it because you know that the opportunity was presented because of the work that you created out of it in some divine way. Like that was your opportunity to do that. It came to you. They could have asked anybody to make jellyfish music. They could have pulled something from, the duty-free stuff online, right? Your open source medium, but they didn't do that. They came to you specifically. Yeah,
correct. And so, right, I think it's just a matter of saying yes. When we say yes, I mean, and being willing to feel scared, because it requires risks. It's not, I mean, it takes a bit of being able to value not knowing exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. The unknown unknowns. It's that state of vulnerable awareness is how I refer to it.
Right.
Yeah. Like you're ready, but you're open.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, artistically, I think that we're being asked, we have to be vulnerable. How can you internally hear if you're not open? I mean,
and then the process would be interrupted by your ego. That's what the lack of vulnerability is, just the control of ego. So if your ego's taken over, you have no eyes to see it. If you're vulnerable, you're open to everything. True.
But the other part of it too is you still need boundaries. Because I see, it's time and place, when to take a risk, and also, but what's it for? I think that I was listening to a talk earlier today, and they were saying, there are two very important times of life. One is when you're born, and the other is when you realize what you're born for.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes. And some people go their entire lives without knowing that.
Right. So if the question, though, is like, what am I born for? Then you're going to get an answer. So keep asking.
All you have to do is ask and be open to it.
Yeah. So, but it's, in terms of, artistically, if there is, for me personally, the guiding light also is like, what is this for? This is to be of service. Whether this is really interesting. I had no idea I was going to actually talk about this. I haven't thought about this in years. It's really great talking with you because, as I'm sure you know, the conversation isn't so much about the person who's speaking. It's about the person who's listening. That, you know what I mean?
Yes, ma'am.
That inspires that flow,
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, I do not score ads. I'm these days actually very, very discerning about the kind of work that I take. And I told the universe point blank, this is because I've realized it's like one of my greatest trainings for film scoring was simply to be, or in life in general, was when I was waitressing. Like, you need to know, the customer needs to know what do they want to eat, and they put in their order and they wait for it to come back. And it's just kind of in that order. So it's like my sole responsibility as a being on this planet is to know, what do I genuinely need? And once I'm clear, or at least have an idea of that, I put in my order and I wait for it to come back.
Yes, you don't describe you don't dictate how it's supposed to come back to you. You just go, okay, there you go. Again, this is that black belt stuff about manifestation that just comes naturally to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's really important to be directed at times, but I think it's also, I've just experienced so many unexpected things over time.
And reasons to trust the process.
Right, because the universe tends to, I might have an idea, but the universe is going to way supersize it beyond anything I can imagine.
Yeah, that's your spirit guides referring to your future self saying, hold her back.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, no offense to myself, but, my temporal mind is relatively puny.
It's a beautiful way to put it. No offense to me currently, but I don't know anything, right? Yeah.
No, I don't. I really don't. I mean, really, no offense. But I don't. And I know enough to know that if I think I do, that often is death rattle in terms of flow.
But what I like about your story is you are somebody that's an example of the productivity and the success as a model, not business-wise, just as a successful undertaking, is you're an example of this process. You're an example of whenever you figure out what you want to do, you go for it. You're not too, I'm going to say, impatient with the process, and you just let things happen. You are the example of how things work in this perfect paradigm, the way that things roll in, the way that you then take them up on them, the scruples and boundaries, like you said, that you have about not doing Mentos commercials or something. That would have been a dope one to write, though. Let's be honest. That's a good jingle. It gets stuck in my head all the time.
I hear you.
I haven't seen a Mentos commercial in years, but it's right here.
Can I share about the ad thing, though? Because I just realized I got off on my own tangent there. Okay, so this is what happened. This was really interesting. So this is years ago now, but this ad that I got asked to do an ad, which normally I wouldn't do, but internally I was guided to do it. So
yeah, what do you do with that?
I took it. So what happened was it was this really, really poorly acted. I mean, it was really funny. I don't have a copy of it anywhere, but or I would show you. But it was an ad for Big and Tall Men's Clothing, and it was members of the Celtics, the basketball team, talking about how they shop there for Big and Tall Men's Clothing, and they were so obviously reading cue cards, like I shop at Big and Tall Men's. It was so bad, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Like this is great. Why this? okay, and again, because this, Brandon, this says a lot about you, man, because I did not think I was going to. All right. So what happened was, this happens to me a lot when I'm sitting at a keyboard. I just experienced going to a different place.
Yeah.
And what I was shown was this. Okay, first of all, that it turns out that ad was going to be played during Celtic games all season, that upcoming season. Now, at the time, the audience for those games was mostly men. In the state of Massachusetts, which is where this ad was going to be broadcast, because it's a Celtics thing, prostate cancer was at an all-time high. Right? So as I'm working on this insanely poorly made, Big and Tall Men's clothing ad, I'm sitting at a keyboard, and all of a sudden I find myself in front of this like medical screen. Now, this is obviously in an interdimensional way. This is not a physical thing. But when those things happen, they're more clear than physical, actually, anyway. So what I was shown suddenly was this diagram of the prostate. And I'm like, why am I being shown this? And I was shown a pulse beat, and I was told internally, this is the healthy pulse of a prostate. This is what the music needs to match, because this is the attunement that every time this ad plays, it's going to be basically this vortex of attunement for whoever's watching who needs it.
Shut up.
For real.
That is fascinating.
For real. Yeah.
So, okay. Now I've just got to ask, of course, did you go back and look at the studies from when that ran to if there was any correlation in a decrease in prostate cancer?
No, I didn't, because then I was on to the next after that.
And again, think about this. If it resonated literally in one person's prostate that then goes on to change the world and inspires a bunch of people, again, I'm pretty sure we have either a zombie apocalypse or an artificial intelligence takeover coming pretty soon. And maybe they're the leader of the resistance and they're fueled by your tunes, dude. This is amazing. So even with the boundaries that you set into place where no ads, and that was a big thing because you had an altruistic motive for it. It seems like the universe said, I know that you said this and we're going to go with you on this every other time. But for this one, I need you just to trust and listen to us. And then you were given that guidance about the pulse. So you set it to that BPM?
Yeah, I did.
Damn, yeah, I did. What BPM was it? I'm just curious.
You know what? I'd have to look back because I honestly in this moment don't remember.
I'm going to say 86.
What's that?
I said I'm going to say 86. I'm just messing.
It was in the 80s. It
really?
was in the 80s. Yeah, it was.
I'm going to be damned if it's 86. Watch this.
I have to. It's in a drive somewhere, like way back in time.
Gotcha.
I can find it. I have it somewhere, but I remember it was somewhere in the 80s. But it was it was meticulously that pulse. But what I was shown in that diagram was that the sickness was coming because the pulse was off.
Wow.
And so that's why, like, even, whatever style of music, whatever's going to achieve the healing is the way to go. Whatever that is. And so, I mean, I've done stuff that I've never done I don't know how to do, and yet I do it. So, it's that, like, what just happened thing.
Yeah, you're just open to it. You've got the talent, but you've got the openness to it, which
right.
Feels
I think
more.
Exactly. I do. I'm very grateful. I am blessed. I was absolutely given talent to work with, but so hasn't everybody been. So, this is not exclusive to me.
But this is where you're empowering, is in this way, because you're now speaking to trust of the process. You're an example of how trusting the process works out. Like this is what we all talk about when we talk about things like this, and you're out there living it and doing it. Now, the reason earlier that I'd mentioned the sound healing stuff, because you hear all these amazing stories about people taking pulse waves, through the human body destroying cancers with it. This is what they do with kidney stones. They do ultrasonic pulsing. Then you talk about molecular disturbance with crystals and things by matching the frequency of the glass. There are so many things having to do with music that are so mysterious. Even down to, have you ever heard of Coral Castle in Florida? Built by...
I've heard. I don't know a lot about it, but I've heard of it, but that's where it begins and ends. So go for it.
That's okay. It's a big mystery, but there's a guy named Ed Lee Scallion who did this, and he was like 5'0", weighed $1 and he built this whole thing for his wife from Latvia, and this was a long time ago, probably in the 40s, in Florida. Okay, and you can still go to this place today and look at it. This one man built this entire complex with blocks of coral. They're actually limestone, but they call it coral. And they built these massive things, and he said that he had figured out how they built the pyramids, and it had to do with sound frequency. So he could actually resonate with the blocks and turn gravity off and then move them into place and set them down. So this is another thing that they talk about. Well, right. And then with Tibetan practices, they have myths in their culture that talk about the focus of directed pitch and frequency and being able to levitate blocks, people, anything.
Yes. Okay. Yes. All right. There's something that back in 1989, I was in a very significant car crash and I had a near-death experience. During that, afterwards, I was bedridden for about 6 weeks. I mean, my head cracked a windshield, my knee went through the dashboard. I mean, it was stupid. But many mysterious things started happening in that 6 weeks of just convalescing, because I was really too weak to, I mean, if I had the strength to take a shower that day, that was the accomplishment for the day back then. And I became aware one day that I was actually doing these outrageous mathematical equations in my head. And I called my roommate at the time, Mikey, a great musician, Michael McLaughlin. We were roommates for years back then. And I said, Mikey, can you come in here and just bring a calculator? So he brought, this is back in the days where people actually had calculators. And so I said, okay, like 2,721 times 393 equals blah. And just rattling off all of these equations. And they were always right.
Damn.
Yeah. So in that incredibly vulnerable state, it was a benefit to have been bedridden at that point, because I was so cracked open. If I had gone out on the street in that condition, I would have snapped out, because my nervous system was so completely, utterly exposed. Like I was like an embryo. And so, but the reason I'm saying this is, just riffing off of what you're saying, like what I became aware of in that state. And I don't have that mathematical ability now. What I was able to partly retain, though, was deep intuition after that. Deep trust and intuition. That never really left.
How old were you when that happened?
What's that?
How old were you when that happened?
29.
29. So you're 10 years after becoming this more than professional musician in your late teens. 19 is what we had talked about. And you're 10 years later, you get this, and now you've been impacted severely with a resulting case.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, let's get super deep real, okay?
Please.
A week before the car accident, I was thinking about quitting music.
What?
Yeah, dude.
So why do you think, though, that you had all these mathematical equations in your mind? Why do you think it went to math rather than anything else? Because there was this correlation that I just felt at the time, that I experienced at the time. Mathematics is the momentum. Like mathematics is momentum. Like all you need is equations to move things. That's what I became aware of. I didn't like sit down and work out mathematical equations, because frankly at the time I wasn't in the headspace to even do that. There was just this awareness that the momentum of mathematics. I'm not a mathematician, by the way, at all. I mean, at all. But in that state, there was something about the joy of math that would just move, had the ability to move things, literally move things.
like momentum, like pick up a boulder and move it through equation somehow, through dimension, through divine symmetry somehow, all of these equations. Mathematics is a divine vocabulary. It's not a math problem. It's a divine voice somehow, like music.
But this is the way in which you are a mathematician. I think that a musician is a mathematician, just that you paint with a baton rather than a pen on a board to work out equations and explain the way that the universe potentially works. You're giving people an experience, but it is mathematically based when you're talking about octaves, thirds, harmonics, rhythms, time signatures, things like this. One of the examples I always use, and I can always spot a 6/8 time signature out in the world, and I'm sure you do this too. You definitely do it too, because this is what you do. But I can always spot it because it hits me with a feeling before that first round is ever even over. You've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our heart beats in 3/4 time, so you resonate with that time signature on a very deep level. Deep,
yes.
Yes, so
totally
anything 6/8,
totally.
3/4, any of that stuff. Like a waltz is 3/4, but a 6/8, of course. And I'm just mainly doing this for the audience. So what I find interesting about this as well is in that state, you are not in a. If we look at the way that the world in which we live, right, in this area around us, if we explain it in dimensional realities and vibration, then this is just a very heavy, dense vibrational state for our true selves, however you believe in that, to exist in. Now, the further you get from a connection to your ability to function the way that this dimension was meant to be functioned in. Let's say autism is a great example, being physically debilitated in the way that you were, even temporarily, like you usually exist in that state. You had something happen to you which took you out of this perfect performance in this dimension, but it gave you access to something else. It's an interesting theory to correlate the distance from which people can fit in, for lack of a better word, to this 3D reality, to the extraordinary things that they can achieve that can't be explained.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, because you look at, even the state of like autism, right? I mean, because that is something that and some people have said that that's the next level of human evolution because of the cognitive ability that they're able to do beyond what we can really measure with things that we understand to exist in this 3D reality. They don't blend into society as far as norms and all of these social things that they're able to do, but they're extraordinary at things like music, comprehension, connection, the way that their intuition, all of these things are dialed up to 11. And that's why they get some socially awkward type of things, because it's a data input overload.
Yes.
But they're exceptional at other things that people really rooted in this third dimension reality really don't have access to and can be viewed as remarkable.
Right. I mean, I think if your antenna is that fine-tuned, then dense vibrations are going to be very deregulating.
Yes, that is a great way to put it.
It's
a great way to put it. So I do want to ask you, we'll probably wrap this up here in a little bit. We've already been doing this for an hour. It didn't feel like that.
Really?
It just blows by. I'm telling you.
And
I still want to talk to you after we hang up, so don't hang up just yet. But
okay.
Please. Something that's interesting too is to the frequency at which pitches are tuned. Have you done any work on the 440?
Yeah. In fact, I'm actually, yeah.
So what is your impression of standard tuning? 440.
I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I've heard people talk about it like that. I personally don't think that it was meant to confine people. I think that it was just meant to have something regulated so that there's an agreed upon pitch.
I agree with that.
Do
you think later, though, it was found out to be that way, and then therefore a nefarious discovery was made, and then... Or do you think that that's out of it completely? You just think it was a standard, kind of like English or a common language, right?
I would say in the limited knowledge that I have of it, because it's not like I've spent too much time really researching that one, but I would say more in terms of a standardized language. However, it's not the most healing necessarily. It's really interesting. If you listen back to any of the tunes recorded in this is a ways back now, but if you listen to tunes that were recorded back in the 70s, 80s, a lot of them are not at 440.
Right. I don't play a 440. I play a half step down.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so this is the question, though. And so I was curious to see is if you had found these magic frequencies and then wrote a composition where all of these deliberately placed healing frequencies that, like the 528, and 932, something like that, you can go through and find these pinpoint hertz type of actions. There are some, I don't know if you're on TikTok, but there are some videos all the time, and basically it's a bell, it's a tone. It's just a sine wave that's at a specific frequency range, and on the screen they'll tell you, this is blah, blah, blah hertz. It's going to open up your third eye, and then, you listen to it 3 times, and then you move on with your life, and you do feel different. I've had a guy on named Matthew Kosel. He's a Tibetan throat singer, so if you have any need for that in any music, I've got you hooked up. He's unbelievable.
That's cool.
But his music, when you listen to it, it lifts it. There's something that happens. You can feel it. It makes physiological changes within you.
Yes.
I'm interested to see, as an experiment, if for you to write something like this, to where you take all of these specific frequencies that do specific things, you could come up with an audio CD that clears all of your chakras in one listen.
Yeah. I actually have been kind of internally encouraged to do something like that.
Now you're externally, audio-wise, encouraged to do something like that. I think that would be so cool. And then you could find out like what would work best, like in a chimpanzee population, for instance, what resonates with them well and keeps a cohesion, keeps a calm, and this is not news to anyone. You can listen to heavy metal and it gets you either pumped up or you're ready to kick someone's ass. You can listen to, symphonies, and depending on what you're listening to, I love the Four Seasons, by the way, that whole piece is incredible. If you listen to something like that, obviously you get into a different state, but it's deliberate. And so it's also deliberate on the other side to kind of create a dissonance within society to the ones that are either in 440. Again, if you're following kind of a nefarious type of an outlook on that, I want to default to that's just a standard, right? Somebody just figured out that this many fingerings on a French horn kind of go in this direction, right?
Yeah. I think that also, one of the things that I'm really involved in is there's the frequencies, but also progressions. Yeah. Progressions are really, and for anybody out there who's listening, if this, if you don't, say you want to do something that's healing, but you don't feel like you have the technology to be able to do different frequencies or whatnot. What I have found, honestly, what's also, very, very powerful is the intention with which you do something.
Yes.
And really finding those intervallic, that's just like basically the distance between two notes. So like just finding those intervallic relationships where you can feel in your own energy, where does this move? Because there are pieces of music, there's something I'm working on right now, actually, that as I'm working on it, I can feel it clearing my body. Mm-hmm. The music itself, I actually like to listen to it, not because I did it. It's not an ego thing. It's because it's healing. Yes. So I like to listen to it. Obviously, it's interesting because with this kind of thing that we're talking about, there are just two different ways. There are two different perspectives because artistically, you always want to improve on what you're doing, and there's all that kind of stuff, And then there's also, if it's really, that kind of purity that you're talking about, then there's going to be another quality to it where it's not even really quite yours anyway. You just, you have the good fortune of being a vehicle for it.
Exactly how I feel about it.
Yeah.
This is another reason it makes you so great, because your awareness of this.
Honestly, that's the whole point.
Yeah, that is.
Because point. I want to be a happy person. I want to have a great life. And this is if I'm not operating out from that awareness, I'm not going to be happy. It's just because I'm not going to be myself otherwise.
Yeah, you just might as well just go write the Monster Mash or something, just throw your life away.
Whatever, right? Yeah, so, but this is it's a natural thing, but I think it's, it's kind of like one of the points of the book. The world really needs you. I'm saying that to you. I'm saying it to the listeners, whoever you guys are out there. The world needs you. So the least we can do is, get to know who we are.
Ruth, you are an absolute delight. You are welcome on any damn time. This has been fantastic. I have a million more questions for you, but we're going to wrap it here, so maybe I can have you back on to come back. And
I would love to come back on. You're amazing.
You're amazing, and thank you for the compliment. I will take you up on that, but it's all about the guests. It's all about this. So you're just incredible. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. So I will, of course, link all of the ways to find you in the show notes, especially your book. I cannot wait to dive into some more of your music, and that is a question I've got for you after we wrap here. But you're unbelievable. I'm truly grateful that we connected in this life. This is Soul Tribe stuff, and I love the way that this has worked out.
Totally
for
cool.
Everything. It's so cool. All right, so thank you so much. Let's speak again soon.
Yay! Thank you so much.
Absolutely incredible woman. Absolutely incredible conversation. She is beyond talented, guys, in all the ways that matter. She is the true expression of living by synchronicity and following the path that you've chosen, but getting out of your own way to do so. We have so much more to talk about. She will definitely be back on, so you guys make sure that you stay in tune. Of course, all of the ways to find her book is linked down there, as well as her website. So go down and contact her. Go check out some of her scores. I mean, I bet you would recognize more of her music than you think that you would. It's incredible, guys. So incredibly grateful to have met Ruth and to be connected in this way. Grace McCormick from a previous episode, a good friend of mine, she represents Ruth. So that's how this got set up. So for this show, guys, you can find us at expandingrealitypodcast.com. That is where the links to all of the socials will be found. You can just go there, YouTube, Patreon, all that other good stuff is there. The music that you're hearing right now is Vinny the Saint. He's a good friend of the show, good friend of mine. His link tree is down in the show notes as well, so please go check that out. Go out into your week this week, guys. It's a beautiful place. Go make some beautiful music. Go listen to some incredible music. Go be moved by some incredible music. Either way you slice it, there's an unbelievable world out here that is truly remarkable, and you can set this world and this experience to a wonderful soundtrack. So check that out. One of my favorite things to do is to, if you feel like you're, getting a message from your spirit guides or something like that, put a playlist on shuffle, and the songs that pop up in whatever order have some message for you from your spirit guide. It's just fun. You can do this with any kind of music, by the way. So go out into your week this week, guys, while you're doing all of that, and pick up a piece of litter. Of course, we only have this one planet. To do your part, to do what we can to mitigate the damage that we do to it. Go and just hold the door open for somebody else. Buy a meal or a coffee, a bottle of water, anything for somebody in line in front of or behind you. It makes a massive impact on the world around you, especially on your day. Like, the impact it has on you is what's the most remarkable about it. So get out of the left-hand lane while you are in the spirit of doing something amazing and high vibrational. Left-hand lane needs to be gotten out of, so that's a good way to do that. If somebody's behind you, of course. So go out also into your week this week, guys. And the whole message of this whole thing is to just be good to one another. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/smartcookie.